Hello everyone, welcome to Anthony's Career Advice, and in this episode we're going to flip the script a little bit. So when we think about interviews, we think about us being on the receiving end, whereas now we're going to talk about what you can do to learn as much as reasonably possible about the organization, okay? So what we're going to talk about here is how to understand what the corporate culture is, right? Outside of maybe what you read online, maybe if you know people who worked there in the past, or what maybe some review sites say about that place as an employer. So here's some ways, some questions to consider using. Now don't use them all, because at an interview, chances are you're only going to have about maybe 5 minutes or so, maybe give or take, to maybe ask a few questions of your own. So you want to limit them towards what you think is relevant in relation to what you haven't already learned or possibly verified through other means, okay? So let's get to it. Sometimes keep it simple, right? So simplicity can mean asking a question like, and this is directed to the panel, right? Whether it's one person specifically, if it's only one person, or a number of people that you're sitting with, and ask them directly, what makes you proud to work at this company? Very simple, because it's personal, which means the answer they're going to provide will be based on what comes naturally to them. Right? So it's not as if they have a planned, canned answer that's very general and vague in nature. So it can throw them off a little bit, which is not a bad thing, right? But whatever they come up with is typically what's true. So the information you can pull from that is saying, okay, this is what's considered most memorable, granted it's a snapshot in time, of this person's experience here. What do I want to do with that information? It's a very simple question. It's a very effective one. Another one is when we think about our own professional development and growth, we want to make sure that it's more of a, what's the best way to put it? More of a collaboration than anything. Like, we own the majority stake and share of our successes in any environment, right? And we want to do that because that means we have a sense of power and control. But what helps is if you're in an environment that fosters, develops, or better yet, sometimes doesn't get in the way of your growth, right? They can either contribute or do nothing. That's ideal, as opposed to not contribute and stand in your way. So you want to ask a question like, how does your organization support your professional development and career growth? What you're looking for here is, are they going to cite policy? Are they going to give you a very general, vague answer like you would probably hear at the intermission of a sporting event, where they're going to give it 110% and it's not over till it's over, kind of cry speech? What really you're looking for is to see, do they have specifics, especially if they are in leadership or if they experienced it themselves, how they felt supported? Right? And what does that support mean? Going back to the core principle of, you're either helping me or you're not getting in my way. Those are ideal situations when thinking about growth and development. It's the base, but it's ideal. Next is, how are you being judged in the challenging situations, or how have you been judged in a challenging situation? So in risk-taking, better yet, is risk-taking encouraged? And what happens if people fail? So in essence, you're saying, how does this organization, from a corporate culture perspective, help you when you're down? Understanding that it was based on effort and you tried and maybe you failed, but what kind of supports are in place? Right? Is it a strict, you are being reprimanded for a job not done well, or is it seen as an opportunity for growth and development? Right? How is that received? Is very important, because that'll tell you a bit about the dynamic, right? And is this a healthy environment? But it's more importantly, it tells you a bit about the hierarchy. Every organization has a hierarchy, and the person that you report to is a reflection or snapshot of what they report to, and so on and so forth, while you trickle in their personalities and their character and how they make decisions, of course, right? Because everyone's unique. But it kind of gives you insight as to what is truly being judged, or how people are truly being judged. Now, this may be a situation where they may not elaborate too much, but what you're really trying to pay attention to, if there's not a lot of detail, is what they're choosing to say, and whether they're being too political or too tactful. Okay? This one's a good one, and I think maybe even leading with this one is, what's one thing you would change about the company? Simply put, because no place is perfect and no person is perfect. Kind of like when they ask you about a weakness, flip the script. What is it that you would change about this company, or what is it you don't like about the company? And they're honest questions. Now keep in mind, their response will most likely be based on their experience and what their values are maybe and what's important to them. So that answer will give you more of a snapshot of them which is not a bad thing, especially if the person you're talking to during the interview is someone you're going to report to. You want to kind of get a sense of how can we build a rapport? What else can I learn about this person beyond what I know in this very formal, structured environment where it's question and answer? So that can be very helpful in giving you some insights around the organization, possibly where the organization may be headed, right? So it's not a bad question to ask, and when I say it's not a bad question to ask, it's not like you're being defensive or you're challenging whether or not it's good enough for you. You're just being honest and saying, like with anything, there's always room for growth and improvement. What would you fix? Another thing is we sometimes, well, in most organizations, people don't necessarily get feedback unless it's in a formal structured setting, like a 6-month review or 1-year review. Sometimes you're getting team meetings or monthly meetings, and sometimes you hear nothing until or unless something has gone wrong. So you want to ask a question around how does the company celebrate successes? Celebrate successes from a corporate perspective. Did we hit our milestones, our goals, and achieve everything that we had set out to do, or we're in process of doing so, and we want to reward our teams or individuals to do so? Or even if it's just the little things that you do on a day-to-day basis. What's the company's policy on successes? How are they celebrated? Is it formally? Is it informally? Is it a combination of the two? Is it incentivized, right? Whatever it is that they share with you is important, right? Because you may say, I like hearing thank you, but I would rather get a bonus of a certain level or percentage. That's how I like to receive my thank yous, right? Or it could be if there's a company newsletter or gifts, anything, whatever the case is, you want to understand how they celebrate successes, which can give you insight in the company, but also into the individual that you potentially could be working for, right? They may be the best leader because they empower you by giving you regular feedback, where that feedback is partly constructive, but also praises the outcomes of your efforts, but also your efforts as alone, whether you're successful or not, and says, you're on the right path, right? Because that can hold weight. Outside of plateauing, people typically leave work because of something tied to the organization and the relationship. Right? If they don't feel like the relationship is going well, whether it's with their boss or with their employer, the company as a whole, they typically start to look out elsewhere. Granted, they also start to look elsewhere when they realize there's no more room for growth. These are typically the 2 reasons why people who want to leave decide to leave. There are other reasons, but these are the 2 main ones. And then another question I would say, and the final question for this video is, how do you as a manager, or if they are not in the position to, how does your manager support or motivate a team? Right? What do they do to motivate people? Like, the base motivation of all work is compensation for services rendered. Why do we know this? Because we signed a contract that says that's what we're going to do. But it's that day-to-day grind that sometimes can help us, or not help us, cause us to lose sight of what's important. So it's important to find out how this team motivates, or how the company or the individual manager tries to motivate people. What do they use? Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, or it doesn't even have to be ideal with what you see as what motivates you, but the fact that someone is trying that could lean you in the direction to say, maybe this is a good place to work if they make me an offer, because there's a willingness to listen and they understand the value of how to get the most out of their people, right? So these are just some questions to consider asking while at the interview, and quite possibly whether you're doing something informal too, like a networking or informational gathering session as well, with someone from an organization or not. So these questions can, I think, help you get a well-rounded picture of what it could be like if you chose to work with them. Granted, it may not be exact, but it's more information. And then you can chew on it and figure out what's right for you. Guys, I hope this was helpful. Like always, like, share, subscribe. Check out, very shortly I'm going to be sending out some more, or uploading some more videos. And yeah, talk to you in a bit. Bye for now.